Hello again, everyone. It's Kaz Beelan, and you're listening or watching Casual Conversations, where we talk to people who are so very important to our world. And today we have back a very good guy and a very good specialist in the world of real estate, Joe Peters. He's iconic here in Central Jersey, right, Joe?
Oh yeah, sort of a legend in his own mind. No, I'm just kidding you. I've been doing this for 21 years old, so a lot of people know me. I'm in a lot of different chambers and leads groups, and I just enjoy working with people in this industry. It's sort of a second career for me. I came out of technology and got too many gray hairs, so it'll be years to stay in technology sales. So I was doing real estate as an investor part time, and I just morphed into it full time. And been doing it well over, in total, over 20 years, probably more like 10 or 12 full time at this point.
Well, that's only 2 decades. Come on, it's only two.
Yeah.
That's not a lot. 20 years is 2 decades. And listen, last time we spoke at the end of 2024, well, actually, the beginning of 2025, and I don't think we had a new president back then yet. So, we have a new president, a new way of doing business, a new way of dealing with things, tariffs, all these kind of stuff going on. Do you think that's affecting the real estate market at this point?
I think that the real estate market, to a great extent, is a little confused right now, like most people are. We had the administration before was given 4 years with no criticism. And there was some criticism, but now the guy that came in, he's going to be here for 4 years. And after 3 weeks, they're saying, "How come prices high?" It's going to take a while to do and to enact what needs to be done. And I'm not defending either side. I'm just saying this is it for the next 4 years. Why don't we get behind the thing and make it work, at least on what you agree on? You can't disagree on everything. So I think, things like unemployment, it's come down a little bit, and interest rates have come down a little bit. They're the lowest since the first of the year. And the employment factor in New Jersey is a concern. We're not in great shape. We only put half the jobs on last year than we did the year before. That probably helps the people who are looking for a house because there's less people who can qualify to get one. But we're still with that supply and demand. We have more buyers by a factor of 3 or 4 to 1, especially under 400,000, than we have sellers. And as a result, prices are still going up. We got 8% appreciation again last year. So the word for this year, I think, and we touched on it last time, is normalization. I think the market is starting to normalize. And what I mean by that is, if we looked at before 5 years ago, before COVID was just 5 years ago on March 13th, we were selling for 50 years, probably 6 million houses a year. We were getting about 4.7% over that 50 years of appreciation. And interest rates were really way down there, down in the sub threes. Well, a couple of things happened. The interest rates are being kept artificially low, and the government decided to stop that for one reason or another, but it has stopped. And they've zoomed all the way up. They were up over close to 9% at one point in time 3 years ago. And now they've settled or acquiesced right around 4.6, I should say 6.65. They've been there for the last month. Given a day of the week, it could be 6.8, 6.6, but 6.65, I guess that's 6 and 5/8, is where interest rates are. And that's good news because that's 0.6 of a point lower than where they were the year before. They even really, if you look back to the first of the year, it's almost 0.4 of a point lower. You might find them a little lower if a little trick being played, like paying down some points up front. But if you go back to the 10-year bond and you add 2.7 to it, that's usually about the 30-year rate. And that's about where we're at right now. The 4-year bond's about 4.2. So 6.67 is about where we're at. So let's talk about, what does normalization mean? We're going back to where we came from, I hope, which is a more normal market. I'm not sure we're ever going to get to where we were at one point in time because interest rates are definitely not going back to 3%. But we were selling houses typically, and I looked up the statistics of just where we were before COVID started. And in Hunterdon County right now, we have 177 properties, and in Somerset County, we have 347 properties for sale. If you look at last year, it was 189, so we've got a few less than Hunterdon because they're selling really quick. And we last year had 306, so we're up about 10%. Statewide, we're up about 14, 15% in inventory. That's good news because the lack of inventory is what's been driving the prices up crazy. But it's still very expensive for that first-time buyer. And most of our disappointing on the buyer side is in the sub 400 class who are the first-time buyer. So let's define a first-time buyer. First-time buyer is probably 33, 34, 35 years old. And they used to be 27, 28, but they're a little bit older because they're getting married later and they're not like when I was married, I wasn't 20 years old. So, today it's more like in the upper 20s. And then by the time you accumulate a little bit of wealth, you're into your mid 30s. First time buyer as a couple are typically making together somewhere about $140,000. They're 3 or 4 years out of school. They probably came out and each one earned 60, one earned 75. They both progressed up a little and added together, and that's that number. They can typically afford, and this is an interesting statistic. I'm just looking for the what I had on it. They typically can afford a house today that's probably about $270,000 based on that income. It says 100,000 in income, so it's a little low. So they probably could get into the low threes. 10% down payment, and today at 6.6 interest rate, they'd be paying roughly 24,000. I should say that's the down payment. Their mortgage payment would be roughly $15,067. Where last year they could only afford a 247. And their mortgage payment was the same. So it's normalizing. And it's normalizing at the higher priced houses first, because there's always less buyers for the higher priced houses. And it's coming downhill. The other thing that's normalizing is we talked about New Jersey's economic issues. New Jersey is challenged with not having enough workers. And as a result, a lot of people feel legal immigration, is the answer to that. And it is in a great extent. If you look at the pharma industry in Somerset County, they would be gone if we couldn't have illegal immigration coming in to fill those entry-level pharma jobs that are out there. And we're at the same time not having children the way we used to. And this isn't meant to be opinionated. This is a statistic. We need 2.1 children for every woman of childbearing age in order to just keep the amount of people we have in the country. And New Jersey's a little behind that.
Joe, let's take a little break. I just want to tell people who are watching and listening that we're listening to and watching Joe Peters. He's a expert real estate man in Central Jersey, Somerset, Hardin County, and you can call him at 908-304-4660, 908-304.
Right on the top of the screen.
Right?
And jpeters.com is my So what does this mean? It means we are not having enough children to backfill. And if you listen to some people, they're saying this is our biggest existential threat, is that eventually we won't have enough people at the bottom side of the equation to fill the entry-level jobs, even if they're just at Walmart or Costco, much less entry-level into a college grad job. And that's an issue. So let's just put up as a known issue that we don't have enough people. So we get a lot of people immigrating into New Jersey. We have large Asian neighborhoods in Somerset County, which includes the Indian population. We have lots of other kinds of. I'm Polish. Kaz is Polish, so we have large. You got large Polish clusters too. So we talked a little about people. We talked a little about the state economy. Let's talk a little about the interest rates. The interest rates just dropping. And let me give you a history rate on interest rates since the end of last summer. Somewhere around September 1st of last year, that's like 6 months ago, 7 maybe, the interest rates were roughly 7%, 7.1. Over the course of the election period, so I'm not insinuating the election caused it, but draw your own conclusions, we saw some Fed rate cuts that totaled a point. In other words, the Fed rate went from 5.5 to 4.5, and interest rates went in the opposite direction. They at first came down, and they were in a like 6.1 ratio. That was early October. We sold everything that was on the books in October and November and closed all of it in November, December. And as a result, we're very short of inventory. But the opposite happened, and they went back up because they aren't really tied to the 10-year. It's just a leading indicator of why they come down. And the reason they went back up is inflation, unemployment, the consumer confidence index all have led to them not cutting it any further and even questioning whether they should have cut it as much as they did. So interest rates have improved. I think we'll see them continue to improve throughout the year 2025. And I think by the end of the year, we may see them in the really low sixes, which is another 0.6%. So that 9% they picked up in buying power, which is offset a little bit by price rises, will be another 9%. The amount of inventory on the market has slowly increased. As I said, we got severely hit in the fourth quarter of last year. And right now, I think I gave the statistic already. Somerset County's got 347 houses on the market of various types. And it's taking us an average of 26 days to sell one. Where if we look pre-COVID, I went back 5 years exactly and look at March 2020, we had 1,019, triple that. And we were selling houses in 57 days. It was taking twice as long to sell a house because we had enough. Now we are so short, they're selling quickly, so it's a lot of velocity. In Hunter County, the numbers are very similar. We had 177 houses where we used to have 643, and we're selling them in 28 days. And way back then, it used to be 81 days. So now, when we start to talk about returning to our normalization, a normal time to sell a house, which means the price on a house isn't going up and the price on a house isn't coming down, is 4 to 6 months. So we're in two very active counties. I mean, because we can get to New York, that keeps us active. And secondly, we get a lot of people moving out of New York out here, and COVID brought a lot of people into the area. And it's another story. Some of them are having to go back. I know some of the telecommunication companies are requiring people to be in 3 days a week. The government's requiring people to be back on site. A lot of companies, IBM, you can't live more than 20 miles away anymore, based on one article I read.
I think that's good. I think that's good overall because it brings people together. People can actually talk to each other.
Absolutely.
And, the business you're in, you have to talk to people and take them into homes and show them stuff. I don't know how you sold homes during COVID, but, people looked at the internet. You can't walk with a little iPhone and say, look, I swear this fireplace is really big, people. It's huge.
I got to tell you my favorite story. I worked in the Grace building in New York. I worked for Allied Stores, and we were in systems development. And we were, 3 of us in the hallway said we had a problem, and we just brainstormed and came up with a solution. And here comes the boss, and he gives these over the glasses look at why are the three of you guys standing here wasting all this money.
Yeah,
And
what's
we
going
told
on,
him that
guys?
blah blah blah. We think we want to develop this. It'd probably take 90 to 120 days, two people. And he said, "You're not the smartest people in the world, and I'm not trying to insult you. Somebody already has invented this. Why don't you go out and buy it, and let's have it in 30 days, and not waste two man people for 6 months." That would have never happened by people working remotely, or probably not have happened. It was spontaneous.
Right.
And when you're together, spontaneous things happen. People feed off of other people. I can't tell you how much I've learned just by sitting in the real estate office when I was a novice, listening to agents who have been around 10 or 20 years talk to people on the phone. It's amazing what you can pick up. So I think face to face is I don't think it'll ever go back to where it was, but I do think it's part of normal life. So normal market conditions are 4 to 6 months. Well, we just said we're selling houses in 26 and 28 days. That's 1 month. That's under a month. So we have been in a sub month and a half plateau on our two counties, Hunter and Somerset, for the last year. We've been selling houses the instant they come on. If a house comes on and it's on more than a week, it's overpriced.
Wow.
That's just the way they've creeped up. We're now at like 1.5 and 1.75. We're getting back towards that 4%. Now, 4 to 6 is what makes a seller's market from a buyer's market. If you're over 6 months on the market, it is truly a buyer's market because you've got more sellers than buyers. And if you're under 4 months, you're truly in a seller's market because you got more buyers than sellers. We're not even anywhere near 2 months, but we're going in the right direction. So we're going in the right direction in 3 different areas. We're going in the right direction in supply. We're going in the right direction in interest. It's dropping. It's never going to get back to where it was because it was artificially brought down. And we're going in the right direction, I think, with the economy, but time will tell. It's a point of consternation. I mean, I have a technical stock that I looked at it this morning. It was down 28 points, almost 10%. I looked at after the close, it was up 28 points. I mean, in one day, it's swaying almost 20% of its value. And that's happening every day. So people say, well, won't we eventually run out of buyers, especially the first-time buyers? And I've told this a couple of times before, but you have to understand what makes people want to buy a house. And we call it the 5 Ds. The first one is diploma. The second one is diamonds. The third one is diapers. The fourth one is divorce. And the fifth one is death. Those things don't stop happening, even though the prices are too high to afford it. So people need houses. We talked a little last time how they're falling into the trap of renting at the same price of buying because they can't find one to buy. And now they're not developing any equity, where that American dream is putting the 10% down and getting equity appreciation on the whole 100%. So inventory levels versus a year ago have improved a little. They're going in the right direction. And I think the thing that's interesting is that people say, well, what's going to happen with the first time buyer, with the general market? Aren't they going to just get fed up and stay where they're at or go? We have statistics that show that of all the people out there, 11% indicated in 24 that they would be buying a house or making a purchase decision. In 25, the same survey says 15%, because this 5D thing is building up. A lot of people have to move too, and that's another reason to get transferred. So I think the affordability factor is coming in the right direction. As I showed you in that one example, people could buy 9% more. So maybe if they can't afford 9% more, they can still get 9% more than they could have got a year ago, less any price appreciation. The other thing that comes up is the what we call a silver tsunami. We have a lot of people. Let me break down the house ownership market. 40% of all people own a home outright, countrywide. Of the over 60%, it's split 50-50. 50% have an under 3.75% mortgage. They ain't moving, not at 7% or even 6.6. And the other percentages have just bought and they're more likely to move. So when we take a look at what's sitting there in equity and add that into the equation, the average equity on a house has built up very nicely. If we looked at from March of 2020 till today in New Jersey, the average house has risen over 60% in value because we've had an astronomical year. We had years where we had 28% appreciation at the peak of COVID. So we have houses really up there, and people say, well, won't they come back down? Well, not when we have more buyers than sellers. They're not going to come back down. They may someday, and I think if this keeps normalizing long enough, we'll see some normalization once again from the high end down. But right now, the over $1 million houses are selling like they were 500,000 2 years ago. So I think you're
Joe,
seeing.
take a little pause. I have a question for you. It's funny you're talking about the population, this the silver, which is I guess the baby boomers who are, now reaching whether 80, the
Right.
top end to early 60s at the bottom end or the young end. And so, it's funny. I was listening to the demographer on the radio this morning on the way in, and they were saying, China messed up because they had the one child policy.
Right.
Japan, very similar. And now there's all these people who are older who need to be taken care of, and they don't have any workers. And he actually looked at US and Canada. He says they kind of doing good so far, which I think might explain why there's so many rentals being built. I don't, and then you move from the rental if you can do it and buy a house on your own. So, but I see a lot of rentals. Like, what is going on with that? I mean, I guess they believe there's going to be a lot of people
Right. We talked a little
here.
about this last month. The rentals are last quarter. The rentals are being built because there are so many restrictions to build a house. You can't build a first-time buyer house economically in our section of New Jersey. So we're putting up lots of rentals, and they started putting them a little further out because people didn't have to go back to the city. And now that antithesis that's taking place, where a lot of people do have to go back to work, is hurting that rental market a little. But the builders are looking at the fact that we don't have as many first-time buyers as we used to, so maybe we should be building bigger houses. So everybody's got a different situation, but a lot of the inventory that's coming on is coming on at that silver tsunami level, and the income then, or the value, is coming down a generation to the children, and the children, to a great extent, they don't want the house that mom and dad. I just sold one in Middlesex, town of Middlesex, in Middlesex County. It was a 900 square foot house with 200 square foot added onto it. So it's a 1,100 square foot house. The bedrooms were minuscule, and the baths were, it's below today's standards, and it's still sold for $500,000. It's because of the supply demand curve. We're getting a lot of sales out of it, and a lot of the sales that are going up are coming out of the silver tsunami, at least in my business. And I talked to other realtors as well, and I'm hearing the same
Hey,
thing.
Joe, we have like 3 minutes left, believe it or not, because we're going through so much information today. And, I just want to remind everyone, and why don't you read your phone number before we continue this?
Yeah,
Uh,
so
three-
908-304-4660.
right
That's
up
my
there.
cell phone. I'm not busy. Yeah, it's up top there. Or jpeters.com is my site. And if you go onto my site, you can find copies of these telecasts and other blogs I've done with other people. I do a podcast myself. My radio station turned into a
Mhm.
podcast during COVID. And I think a lot of times you just need to talk to somebody. And that's me. I've done this a lot. I've been in the business 20 years, all added up, and I probably sold 400 or 500 houses in that time frame. And in effect, I've helped a lot of people find what they want. I've helped a lot of people sell the house that they want, and I can lend that experience to your situation. So if you're thinking about selling, you're in a great market. If you're thinking about buying, you're in a challenging market. But as a seller, it takes 2 or 3 months, maybe more, depending on the condition of the house, to get a house ready for market, unless it's pristine. And they typically aren't. They typically, and then I could say, okay, I just had a guy put a rec room in his house, but he still wants to sell it and move on. I said to him, you're never going to get the money back out of that rec room. Yeah, but in this market, the way it's appreciated, he very well might. He's not going to at least break even. He's not going to make any money on it. But I could tell you what will bring buyers in and what won't. I mean, basically, I'll give you the first tip is when somebody pulls up to your house and they can't see their neighbors or their relatives pulling up to the front of that house if they buy it, they don't even get out of the car. It's got to have curb appeal. Now, curb appeal is pretty inexpensive. Sometimes it means some shutters or a coat of paint or some new shrubbery, but it just has to look like, wow, that looks good. Then when you get inside, you get to the kitchens and the bathrooms, they're expensive to replace, and they're typically not worth doing it. You won't get 50 cents on the dollar out of them today. Rec room, maybe 40 cents on the dollar. So that's the kind of expertise I can lend. I can help you find resources if you need contractors, if you need mortgage people, if you need anything done to the house in the process of buying or sell it. I've got a list of contractors I've been working with for. So I'd love to hear from you. Joe Peters, Coldwell Banker, 908-304-4660. As he said, it's up top. jpeters.com. You can find my newsletter there. You can sign up for the newsletter and get a copy in the future. And you can also look at all my blog posts. And
yeah, there's so much information. Joe has so much knowledge. Every single time I thought I have enough, we've done a couple of these episodes, but never enough. He'd tell you stories, all kind of stories about real estate and the neighborhoods and everything. He's the true expert. And as big final question as always, again, you keep coming back here. Why do you keep coming back and talking to me on these casual conversations?
Well, I find it a good avenue to talk to my customers. As I explained to you, I'm looking for new ways to find people to talk to. And there's a lot of agents, a lot of good agents. So, sometimes you'll talk to 2 or 3 and it's really hard to decide. You have to pick the one out that makes the most sense to you. I come back because I think it's a good way to meet new people. And we get a lot of hits on this site, and I get a lot of hits on my page for this site. So it's proven to be a good medium for me.
It's awesome. Thanks again, Joe. Everybody go out there. If you're buying a house, you're selling a house, Joe is the one to go to. Joe is where you go. There you go. How about that one? New slogan for you.
So you got my number, you got my email address, you got my domain. Just give me a shout. I'd love to hear from you guys. Thank you. Thank you for the time.
This video be untouched.